not winos, not addicts, princes shall come out of Egypt. Not inferior people, not misguided people, not demoralized or exploited, not addicts, not the miseducated, not the uninformed, not the beleaguered, but princes shall come out of Egypt, and Ethiopia shall soon stretch forth her hand to God. And this program that we've come to honor, the Higher Education Opportunity Program, has been part of our historical and spiritual consciousness for over 40 years. You, the students of the program, what would over 30,000 graduates say is our legacy? If our students were filing in front of our offices today, what chronicles of triumph would they recount? What songs of victory would they sing? What stories would they recite about how we fought, loved, and gave them love to go on? What stories would they recite about how we were excellent role models for them? What beats would they chant about how we gave them determination to live, to fight on, and be empowered? Yeah, as was the case with Queen Nzinga, would their stories, their narratives, their songs, their testimonies, their chants proclaim the sources of HEOP's historical lineage? And that lineage is simple and explicit from my vantage point. What is the source of HEOP's historical lineage? That historical lineage, it seems to me, is struggle. HEOP was born out of struggle, and HEOP was born out of resistance. Now, you are young folks, and sometimes young folks don't know too much about struggle. Sometimes young folks don't know too much about resistance, but this very program that you're participating in today was born out of a sense of struggle, was born out of a sense of resistance, was born out of a sense of people not having, but people wanting. I suggest to you that in 1969, when HEOP was created, the Board of Trustees, I don't know if we got any members of the board here, the presidents and the professors and all the wise pundits on colleges and universities all across the state of New York, they weren't sitting around their campuses and wondering, what don't we have on campus? They weren't out of a sense of moral outrage. They didn't say, what things don't we have on campus? And they weren't sitting down at the table in 1969 saying, well, we don't have African Americans. We don't have any Latinos here. There's no poor white people here. And in righteous indignation, they didn't rise and say, we don't have any, let's get some. That's not the way it worked, ladies and gentlemen. That's not the way it worked. After realizing that they did not have these folks, they didn't suddenly stand up and say, let's get some. It didn't happen that way. It didn't happen that way by a long shot. Struggle is what brought HEOP to the campuses. A struggle for justice in America, and just as important as that struggle for justice, a struggle for the transformation and hope of a people. You got to understand this. And I know that this is not, I got to give you like a history lesson. You see, because you participating in this program, but most of us don't understand the history of the program. The history of this program, it was born out of people in motion, people doing things. It was born out of struggle. And I've come here today at the invitation of Sister Hazel. I've come here today to tell you the truth. As I said, I'm 57 years old. And I learned one thing in my 57 years. I've learned to tell the truth to people. I learned to tell the truth to people. See, because if you don't tell the truth to people, people will eventually come into the knowledge of the truth, and once they come into the knowledge of the truth, they're going to condemn you as a liar. So you might as well just tell them the truth. Because once they find out the truth, they're going to say, well, you lied to me. In the early 1960s, when colleges and universities were under pressure by activists and by progressive students to begin to make a place for blacks, and other deprived groups. They were often looking for elitist black students, elitist Latino students. What do I mean by elitist? Those black students, those Latino students, those poor white students who will cause the least amount of trouble. They had the grade, they had the money. Buppies, in other words. That's who they were looking for. But lo and behold, the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King and the attendant urban rebellions. And I use the term urban rebellion. I don't use the term riots, because riots connote people just running around ignorantly and indiscriminately, just killing and murder. I say urban rebellion because people were in rebellion. With all of that, the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King and these urban rebellions, the campuses became more sensitized to the needs of black people, to the needs of poor people, to the needs of Latino people. And people clamored for something to be done. And so that something to be done was the creation of HEOP in New York State. And you may not, you don't know too much about the 60s and what happened. You had armed students at Cornell, Willard Straight Hall, armed students taking over the student center. Black students taking over the student centers. I know some of you who are as old as I am remember that. And America was holding up and said, oh my God, what's going on? What's happening? And these armed students took over the student center. And with all that was taking place in American society, HEOP was created in response to what was going on. So it wasn't the abhorrence of racism and oppression that brought HEOP to the campuses, contrary to what you might have been told. It was the pressure and struggle of the people to be free that forced these campuses to create programs like HEOP. This is the legacy. This is the history of this program. This is the history that you are in lockstep with. This is the history that you have to be consistent with. This is the history that you must understand to be a full and active participant in this program. Because the election of Barack Obama, not to the contrary, we can go back in history where there were no such programs as HEOP. I know this may be contrary to popular sensibilities. I know that campuses, college presidents, provosts, they told you that these fine institutions like New York Tech, they joined HEOP out of a sense of social responsibility. They saw poverty. They saw racism. They saw sexism. They said, oh my God, we must join HEOP. No, it didn't happen that way. It didn't happen that way. The people were in struggle. HEOP was created, and these campuses said, we don't want urban rebellions and people uprising where we are, so let's join that program. Frederick Douglass said in the 19th century, he said, listen to me. Listen to me. Listen to me closely. He said, history is the long and tragic story of the fact that privileged groups seldom give up their privileges voluntarily. If you understand, that's powerful. History is the long and tragic story. It's a long story, but it's a long story that is tragic. The fact that privileged groups, groups that have privilege, they seldom give up their privileges voluntarily. They never give up their privileges voluntarily. You think a person who has privilege is going to say, well, I'm tired of my privileges, got too many privileges, let me give some to you. People only give up their privileges when they are forced to give up their privileges. You think America, being a racist society that has an oppressive heel on the backs of people of color that is going to